So yeah, just laughing, cheerful feelings the other night when I was finishing up work. I'm like, okay, unsolved mysteries, and then sightings. Was there any other new, like, journalistic ones and not purely about storytelling? Let's think. Okay. Well, always, if you're talking about listening to me, I would say always many fiction things are absolutely real too. But let's go. So the spectrum of stories that they would tell, where it was like not only about Gaia, that Gaia is actually real, it's an energy force and a living organism, about outside civilization aliens in the whole galaxy that travel around through multi-dimensional you know, changing space bodies and all this stuff, and weird, like the Mayan prophecies about 2012, the end of the world that happened around December 21st, 2012, was predicted by the Mayans, and then their whole thing about the mysteries of the old the old structures that were left from the earliest points of civilizations, like the pyramids, which have weird coincidental similarities, which are all based on astrological, calendrical kinds of ways that early civilizations would understand their point in the whole universe or on the planet, and the relations to how it survived during. And this is a little scary, kind of a rant sometimes to some people too, because they're like, it's the middle of winter, you should be talking about like bad movies and snuggling up, drinking hot cocoa. But anyways, back to sightings and unsolved mysteries. What's it called? The Bigfoot, whatever it is called, Sasquatch, kinds of things around it that were paranormal subjects. What's it called? Cryptids. Oh, you never heard the word cryptid back then. It was always about like strange creatures, ghosts, and energy vibrations that actually can be picked up in an electromagnetic sense, and like strange stories. But then it would go back even further to current journalistic actual witnessing of craft landing and interacting with people, leaving traces, including government acknowledgement. Like I was saying, just thinking also too, kind of in a other side of the coin, just thinking about how Tucker Carlson was claiming that 1,000 people have died by UFOs, and there's tons of evidence that they have gotten exposure to it that causes traumatic brain injury. What else? UFOs actually interacting with the military, causing mishaps in the Cold War, and what do they call it? What did Reagan call it or whatever? I can't remember. But and then, yeah. My phone's acting funky. And then, what else? Stories of, I guess we could go back to the close encounter spectrum 1 through 5, I think. Actual large-scale witnessing of it, similar to like when the people would say they would saw the Virgin Mary in, what is it called, Spain or whatever it is, in the 1800s. Similarity to biblical kinds of things of seeing like thousands of orbs in the sky. I still think about the Virgin Mary, how there's been current ones too. I forgot what they call it. It's not Virgin Mary. Damn it, man. Oh well. It has to do with Saint Maria or whatever. Maybe that's a good thing to write down too. I've been thinking of biblically the Book of Thomas and what are all those? I don't have no idea about it. I'm a little old devilish fool kid. Project Blue Book. You think? And then Roswell happened in the 40s. But then thinking about all crazy it is, but they would also have like like kind of like a sleuthy kind of like the guy just wanted to check in on his lady to see if how she, you know, how many other men she's been fucking. And then they're like, the sleuths look into it. They're like, wait, what? There's actually proof of. And then are ghosts real? You know, because back then that's definitely a big one people would suspect. Or like, and then they think, oh, how do you describe this? There's definitely kinds of crazy government projects for mind control, and that's and then the government confirms that. And then just like missing people, unfortunately, that's the saddest part about those shows, though. And it's so funny though how there would be a mix of that. It'd be like serious news about kidnapping cases or missing cases, sadly, but then there would be just a whole other parallel of just, and I want to say, you know, the thing about James Kent says about the New Age is just because they didn't have confirmatory checking, but I think actually part of it is you're actually, like I was trying to tell my friend Chris about forays into the unknown, so to speak, the mysteries out there, the unknowns, that why would they even be, you know, causing up you know, so much confounding bad information, but still, you know, it was so strange that it actually has to do with like the mediums and that technology records with, and how we like how they say the brain is it only picks up a certain part of the whole electromagnetic spectrum that actually makes it powered, and but there's so much more going out there, and that is actually all, which, you know, the way it's like a crazy soup of higher dimensional string thing, or no, what I'm saying, that sometimes maybe they were thinking that all the tiny particles could somehow be related to the whole way that the whole universe works. Is just like, just, yeah. But it was so crazy. In the news, they said the red sprites were out again, and that day before I heard that story, I saw it. It was like, it looked like a mini tornado. There's like a very faint kind of cloud, but it's so sparse compared to the whole sky. It's kind of like beige, or like I said, the color of like vaporized Brillo. And then underneath it, there would be like this weird, like tornado-y kind of like white part of it. And I'm like, that's exactly what those red sprites look like. I didn't, but when I saw it, it was like the aurora, like it cut open to the whole space, cut open and was just coming at me at a different way. It was not like necessarily seeing a red light like you, but that same kind of like fractal strangeness, I think, is, you know, related to that night where I didn't take a photo, but damn, that shit was so wild. I was like, oh, look at the little turquoise and green, and then it's like, well, that's the color of these comets and all this stuff, and oh man, it's just so weird when I experience stuff, and then YouTube comes back at me with like stories about it. It's like that has to be engineered entirely or what? But dude, what I saw was crazy. Like, I guess some people just have to experiment with flying drones that are like really laser-like and could be like, you know, counterfeiting that kind of thing that I saw. But I swear to God, it was just too strange. I mean, I said I didn't tell the whole story because I would need to either be told that it's okay to tell it, or I want some money for it. Just kidding. But yeah, that night. Oh yeah, and then the sacred flower of life was broadcast. I mean, that's when I knew that, because of Mind Machine, there's so much strange change. It's like, okay, they probably thought that the brain was like a radio signal, right? That it's only picking up some part of this whole spectrum, kind of like how a radio works, right? That it's not even like a radio spectrum. What reality is like kind of like the thing about, what is it called, the waves and photons. That's what that is. It's like some way that just modulates. I could be wrong though. I hope, you know, I need to then put in my notes, yeah, read about what's called the Sephirotic Tree of Life, because I always talk shit, but I never back it up. But yeah, is it just going to be about how God created man and mankind is a failure, or is it about, like, literally the in-between, the many in-betweens between man and the very little sparks that angels throw at fucking the people down there? Who knows? Like I said, the brain, what I've been looking to, maybe write this down, is carrier signals and the human biocomputer. But yeah, my thing is, okay, they had that kind of wrong. Because the idea of what a spectrum is isn't even like a parallel in regards to anything really, higher energy vibrations. It's not a parallel. It exists in, you know, kinds of dimensionality sometimes. I could be wrong, but yeah, that fucking thing, what was it? I got out of the car, and I remember, yeah, it was just this cloud that you see going, and you look up, and it was like the outside of the cloud was like extra orange, like, but the thing is, all the power going out that way was shut down. It was pitch black. So it was like in this valley. In this valley, you could see as it goes blacker and blacker and blacker because no light, because no power going into this valley going east, and it just gets darker, 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 right? And you could see that there was light going whoop, whoop, in these clouds that started going up for infinity. And this thing was like a meow, 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 meow. And you look out kind of like back towards civilization, but still going east where there's more, no, so there's more light, power. And instead, at this base, it was like a, like I said, it's not even this shape, it was an oblong shape, so it was like this, like a kind of like, like a kind of like weird cloudy shape. And it's like, the edges of it were like the color of like light coral maybe, but it's in the middle of the blackness too, so it's hard to explain. And then it's like kind of like a red, like a, you know, like electric dark red mixed with like a very low shade, like kind of like normal light. But it was redder. I noticed that. That's why I was like, oh, there is auroras, because I was seeing the red part of it. And then black shape, there was. Yeah, there was the comet landing the next day. It was like more concentrated at the edges, and in this, I saw one bright turquoise, just point of light, and one bright emerald point of light. I want to interject that, yeah, the next day they said there was a comet in the Philippines that landed an asteroid. And I was even recording comet or whatever. Yeah, the next day. And these strange feelings about mushrooms somehow too. And I did look into it. There are, like, you know, grades of, besides comets, asteroids, meteors, then there's actual, like, what their materials. And that's why I want to go back to college in a serious sense, but so I kind of disregarded that for a while. And maybe there was some surrounding one too, like just normal stars shapes, but it was kind of, you know, like the golden, but it was so faint. It was like faint, purple, green, and it was like this, definitely this darker kind of like blood red, dark blood red, in the center of this, looking out southeast, and still looking up, and you could see this, and it moves like how lightning would move, like crackle. But yeah, this thing, it went up for forever. You never see clouds that would be flying up for forever. You know, not forever, but, you know, continually. There's a word in Latin for it. The point of your head completely going up, what do they call it? For, I don't know. Yeah, you probably study Latin too for shapes and stuff. And read that book too. Let's write this down. Read Blue Book. And what is it called? Like, it's called Azimuth. Or is that a Latin perspective? perspective vocab. So, yeah, I was like, you're kind of like, and then there was like, there was stoplights, but it wasn't like that because you could see, because there was no power, and it's going into this valley where I have to study too a little bit of the weather, lightning. What else are we doing? Weather plus lightning. Like how clouds and static work. Did I forget any good ones? Shit. Listen to it. Just go on SoundCloud, get the, or SoundCloud, go on Soul motherfucking Seek or whatever. You get all of Unsolved Mysteries, all sightings. Yeah. So then I'm walking and I'm just like, what is that shape? It was like the oobleck shape. Like I said, darker red. You could just tell the way that the night was being illuminated. It was completely weird. And then yeah, so I looked at and I remember I knocked on like one door. I kept having to knock. I got so lost. I knocked on like 4 doors in a row. Unfortunately, 5 doors in a row. I forgot what happened. This thing about how the receipts eat itself or something, or the receipts are whatever. I didn't publish my screaming rant about how printers are. They can be a laser, or they can be ink, and they can actually be a combination of two on paper. And it's funny that you know that recently, yes, as well as getting annoyed about that fact that there was unfortunately fires in China on paper factories. But anyways, get back to the point. So this night, what would we say this would be? This is first. I want to say this is. I could look back at the latest May, the 2nd week to maybe 6 weeks from now. God, that was so weird. And then yeah, oh yeah, then this is the night before Marilyn Manson was playing at the fucking North Island Credit Union Amphitheater, and I saw him after that driving around. But that fucking, it wasn't, like I said, the pictures of the red sprites, that extremely rare kind of lightning, it was like being inside of that instead of seeing it from the outside. And what I saw was like the most beautiful night I've ever seen in my whole life, where I was just gonna be, there are anime pictures of this somehow, or there are like strange USSR kinds of maybe photographs that come close to how I thought it looked, but it was so beautiful. There was like still bits of turquoise, there was still normal stars, but they were so golden and faint, so differently placed on the horizon with all this other clouds. I was like, and it was just really crappy, and I was like, is this just because I'm fasted and making this all up? Found out later, yes, there's some certain kinds of extremely rare kinds of rare lightning that only have been confirmed after 75 years of even existing, called red sprites. And yeah, that's why I called that night the red sprite. And do I remember anything else? Is there anything preceding it? Is this good? No, just going to that new apartment complex that's like a U shape and being like, this shit sucks. Anything else? Oh, I have so many stupid stories. But yeah, I should figure out which one that was at. Actually, this is probably August for first week, I think. September, October. Yeah, it's kind of close. We have July 27th, 1947 is when Roswell happened. And then the whole preceding year, why I'm being so strange is I realized that Lane, feeding me into that fact, that actually isn't completely fabricated in falls, unfortunately. And then, like, what's his name says, Michio Kaku says, he says that it's fake. But actually, there is, the whole point of Roswell being rediscovered in the 90s is it's proof that there were kinds of crazy radioactive type experiments happening on subjects of the public, and the government acknowledged that too. So I don't know whatever. But he says some weird stories, like his thing about when he was in high school, he made a fucking football field long kind of condenser coil that, for it's like, damn. He was the OG before fucking Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil deGrasse Tyson now is like, it's a whole other kind of an era in industry. Man, they're so brief, actually. Yeah, maybe getting some good coast to coast too. Yeah, I said it wrong. So, like I said, the brain. What I want to ever look into, maybe write this down, is carrier signals and the human biocomputer. But yeah, my thing is, okay, they had that kind of wrong, because the idea of what a spectrum is isn't even like a parallel in regard